and was here already. So the reality of that, oh, was so dicey. I was glad that my sister Yolanda was here. I was glad to return to someplace I was very familiar with. I was glad to be someplace without snow. And when it does snow, they shut down everything. But the looming thought of the reality of Mark's absence made it very difficult, to the extent that normally I could get in the car and drive from Pennsylvania to Virginia straight one shot. I was kind of thinking it was going to be difficult, so I broke up the trip and I stopped at a girlfriend's house in Maryland, DMV area, stayed overnight, and then drove to Virginia from there. And that was a good decision because I don't think I could have made the trip. I was so emotionally distracted in everything that was going on. And I don't think I told my girlfriend this, but when I stayed at her house, it was the first time staying there since Mark had passed. And she placed me in the same room that Mark and I always slept in. I just, she told me where I was sleeping, and I went upstairs with my bag and I went into that guest room and I just stood there and I just wept. I didn't want to cry too loud so she could hear me downstairs or have to change anything. But it was like, oh, baby, you are not here. And I am in this room without you. I stayed up so late because I didn't want to go to bed without him in that room. And I finally went to bed and I cried some more. And I got up that next day and I drove to Virginia. And I have been here since. And I am grateful, extremely grateful for all of my friends and family who have been with me on this journey. And you have just met a few of them. You have not met all of my family and all of my friends that have been extremely supportive. And I just share that again because I encourage you to stay connected to your friends and family. Let them shoulder you, let them hold you up, let them prop you up with love and support. Let them be there for you. It's okay. One of the things that Monica and I talked about, she said how important. Yes, I still have a pad, a whole sheet of paper. I'm trying to figure out how to prop it up over here, and it's not working. It's sliding on my leg. So I'm just going to hold this instead of trying to make it incognito. One of the things that Monica talked about was how important it was that I did seek out professional help, to have a therapist, a counselor. It has been uncharted territory. And to give me a safe space to talk about what I was experiencing, and then give me the words and the posture to be able to share that with my family and friends. Because when I was able to communicate to them how I was feeling, when I was able to articulate with words that they could understand, it gave them a guide on how to be there for me. It also connected me directly with other widows and widowers, and that was extremely helpful, to have a one on one interaction with somebody going through the same thing that I was going through. Not that misery loves company, but it was helpful to talk, to engage, to really hear from someone, like right in person, sort of like what these podcasts are doing, that they felt the same way that I felt, that what I was experiencing wasn't so different. And let me say right here, that's actually why I'm doing the podcast. That's actually why I'm doing this social content. I know sometimes it may be difficult to directly connect with someone else that is a widow or a widower, and to be able to share and hear. We are dealing with the outskirts of a global pandemic. People are still a little shy about coming out and connecting with other people, but yet they are grieving the loss of a loved one, a pet, expectations not fulfilled, life changes, unemployment, depression, financial distress. And some people are dealing with it all alone. They may not have someone that they feel comfortable to reach out with, may not have access to a therapist. This may be the closest they come to connecting to someone, hearing and understanding them. And you are not alone. I am on this journey with you. And I can also tell you there are a lot of other people on this journey with you. As of today, Widowhood Real Talk with Tina across all of our platforms have connected with 19 countries and over 651,000 people. That's just mind boggling to me. That many people have been able to connect to the journey that we're sharing. And I pray that they're being inspired. And as I say pray, also one of the things that Monica talked about was her faith and encouraging in this very difficult time that whatever your faith is, that you lean into it, that you allow this be a moment where your faith strengthens you. Sometimes we're at our place where we worship or where we're receiving information about our faith, and we likened it to the idea that this is not a public broadcast. This is not a test. This experience that you're going through right now is real. It is a real experience. And this is a wonderful opportunity for your faith, the people that you practice your faith with, to strengthen you, to encourage you, to support you, because this is not a test. This grief that you're experiencing is real life. And it needs everything that you have practiced in your faith to bring you through it. You want your faith to be something that you leverage. This is where you lean in with everything you have to be able to come and experience this grief day by day. And with the desire, my hope for you is not just to have a life, but to have a life that you thrive in, to at some point, sometime, be able to take your pain and make it purposeful. However, that will be reflected in your life will determine in time. But right now, I want you to be hopeful. Right now, I want you to realize that life has something for you, that you are here for a reason, and to keep getting up every day and keep going moment by moment and just keep going. One of the other things that Monica said is, I do have a lot of people that were caring for me, but I did also carve out time for myself. Coffee is hot, y'all. And that carving out time for myself, I was not apologetic about it. I realized that I needed to just sit down sometimes and do nothing. Sometimes just allowing other folks to do things and me just sit there and just go, oh my gosh, Mark has died. And I don't have anything else to say or to add, but just taking in the reality of that. And there was a lot of time I just had to sit with it. My mind needed to just take it in, the reality that he was no longer here. Sometimes it would be a couple of minutes, sometimes it would be hours. I can tell you sometimes it was days where I was just sitting by myself in the quiet and just staring out the window, just thinking of, I am now living in this earth without Mark Thornwald. And what does that mean? What does that look like? How did we get here? Going over all of the things that transpired in the weekend and just going, yeah, this has really happened. That was for me. She also talked about the need to make decisions out of necessity. I didn't want to make all those decisions. I dreaded the idea of going to the funeral home to make those plans. I remember getting in the vehicle with my brother and Catherine and Alexander and getting ready to drive to the funeral home. And my brother was looking at me and he was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Well, we're going to go to the funeral home. I know where it's at." He said, "You're not driving." And I was like, why? He said, Tina. And I said, I guess you're right. I was so emotionally distracted. I don't even know if I would have driven straight there. I may have driven to New Jersey instead of down the street to the funeral home. Sitting there in that funeral home, thinking about making these decisions for my husband's body, engaging Catherine and Alexander to be part of that process, going to the insurance company and having to file that he died, every phone call that I had to make, close a credit card, a retirement plan, his employer, none of those decisions that I wanted to make. And let me tell you something. It is 6 years later, and I'm still making decisions about his death, about him dying. I'm still receiving mail. I'm in a whole nother state with his name on it. There are still accounts that I'm finding, or things, or a business that needs to be taken care of. It doesn't stop. It is not as difficult. It is not as gut wrenching, painful as it is now. But that need to make decisions out of necessity still continues. The widow or the widower, or maybe the children, you don't get to just throw everything to the wind and say, forget it. If you do, there's consequences for that. But there are decisions that you will have to make for a long time. Share with me some decisions you've had to make since your loved one passed. Put them in the notes. Let me see. Tell me I'm not alone and still dealing with this. But being planned and organized really did help. Unfortunately, Mark and I say unfortunately, but fortunately, Mark and I thought about one of us not being here early on when we were married. And we thought about what that life would look like for that surviving person. And we kept that in the forefront of our mind with decisions we made, choices, and we it had a plan in place. And so, literally, I remember when my brother was in Pennsylvania and he was sitting at the dining room table, and I came up with these folders, and he was like, "What is that?" And I was like, "This is the death plan." And he was looking at me, and I was like, I just threw all the folders on the table, and I was so upset that I had to enact the death plan. But I was also so grateful that we had a plan. And my brother went to work with an Excel spreadsheet, names, phone numbers, point of contacts, different things that I needed to do. And he made it really simple as he could. And I say that if you have the ability, if you're watching this podcast because you're trying to learn, then I encourage you to not say if something happens, but when something happens. We do not get out of this world alive. So have a plan for your loved ones. Put things in place. Do the work. And it may be difficult to think about your own demise, but the love that you have for the people that will be here when you're not, that's an expression of you preparing for them. And once you do it, you can fold it up, you can put it away, and it's done. But try to leave them prepared. Oh my gosh. I thought I was going out of order. I was, but I got a lot of stuff covered on this list. Hmm. Oh, so about that joke. So Mark was a hunter, and white man from Pennsylvania. I met him in the military, loved him much. And in the podcast notes with Monica, there's a couple of pictures with Mark. I realized that up at this point on the podcast, I didn't share any pictures of Mark. It just didn't dawn on me. Well, actually, it came to my mind because as other people are sharing their stories, you will see pictures of their loved ones. And I realized, Tina, you never shared a picture of Mark. So if you go to our website and look at the blog notes, you'll see a couple of pictures of Mark there. And we were young kids. We met in the military. And I didn't have deer, let alone a lot of other things that I learned and experiencing with him. And what I did come to find out, deer meat is gamey if it is with the wrong butcher. He had a really good butcher in Pennsylvania, and that meat, you would have just thought it was cow or beef. You would not have been able to tell the difference. And Monica's husband Jay was talking so much trash. Like, I would never eat deer meat. I don't like deer meat. Ooh, that's so gross. You eating Bambi. And I was like, every time he would say something, we'd be at their house. I was like, one day I'm gonna shut that deer meat hating dude down. I mean, I love Jay, but it was just like, low key gonna get you. And we finally had them over for dinner, and it was like, oh, talk to Mark, talk to Catherine Alex. I said, I think we got a little jokey going on. And we were full on into it. Jay came over, food was set, stroganoff, the pasta, some corn, because Cornwalls in our house, we loved us some whole kernel corn. We literally would say, what are we having with the corn? Okay, I digress. And so Jay sits down, everybody's eating, and he's like, oh, this is so good. Yum, yum, yum. And I was like, trying to be quiet, chew my food quietly. Then he was on the second plate. And I was like, I don't know if he made it to the third, but I could not take it. And I was like, hey, Jay, how's that deer? He was like, what are you talking about? I was like, that dish right there. And he was like, oh. I was like, just go on and swallow. Just go on and finish chewing that and swallowing. It's too late now. He was so mad for so long. But it was great. So that is one of the great stories and memories regarding Mark and a friend, and still to be able to laugh about that and think about how great it was. Jay eventually stopped being mad, and he was actually very critical part of one of Mark's Valentine's celebrations. He connected because Jay and I both worked on Toby Hannah together, and he got with Jay and told him to have me at a certain place and time. And Mark had a quartet come to my job and sing to me for Valentine's. Now, this 23 large necked Pennsylvania guy was not always the most mushy. His neck may have been larger than that. I don't know, but really thick neck. Pennsylvania hunting, slaying, gun toting guy. I was blown away. The whole office was in an uproar. They were like, the guy came to my desk. Jay is like, where are you at? I was like, I'm going for a walk. It's break. He's like, when are you going to be back at the office? I was like, he asking me a lot of questions. So I get back to the office and he comes to my desk. He says, you need to come up front. I'm like, and he's being demanding? Okay, I'm going to see where this goes. And no, the guy from the quartet came to my cube. He said, are you Tina Cornwall? And I was thinking, I don't know this guy. Okay, I'm going to say yes. Yes, I am. He said, could you come up front, please? And I was like, all right, there's a lot of people in the office. If something goes shady, they got my back. And I sit down, and one of them hands me a rose. And then they start singing. I was like, this man right here. At this point, I didn't even have a box of chocolates. I hadn't brought Mark a card. I wasn't even thinking about Valentine's Day. And I look at Jay and he's just over there snickering because he pulled it off. I was blown away. The whole office was standing. The commander comes out. The ladies are crying. The guys are just in awe. I come home and Mark is in the basement doing laundry. And I was calling his name as soon as I got in the house. Catherine and Alex already knew. And they were like, Mom, Mom. And I was like, oh my gosh. And he just had this little snicker on his face. And he was so proud of himself. And I was just amazed at what he did. And so I tell you, oh, the other thing, Monica, after being with me there in Pennsylvania and then being able to come here to Virginia for my girlfriend's breakfast and to be able to celebrate and to see what life is doing was so enriching. I was so glad to be able to have her here, to be able to celebrate with so many women for a few days, to sleep here, to stay up late at night, yada, 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 and to be able to do that. What you have seen of me so far, I have friends literally so many different ways, so many ethnicities, So many different walks of life, and all of my friends and my family have made me who I am. And I am grateful for them being in my life. And I am grateful for you being part of the hood. I am sorry for the grief that has caused you to be part of this conversation, but I'm glad that you're part of the hood. I'm glad that you're here with us going on this journey. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your life. Talk to you soon.